Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Stories on the Rooftop. For those that are joining for the first time, welcome and thank you for joining us. And for those who are returning, welcome back. And we're glad to have you again with us this evening. So my name is Eliza Mita, team member for Stories on the Rooftop. Stories is part of the Arts and Culture portfolio of the Aga Khan Youth and Sports Board. It's a platform for sharing personal experiences and engaging in an open dialogue with each other. And through these conversations, we seek to enhance our understanding of diversity of experience within our community and discuss issues that are relevant to all of us. I'm delighted that Jamila Damani will be our speaker today, and she'll take us through her experience of having a stammer. Jamila will talk about what stammering is, some of the myths and challenges, and the tools and lessons she has learnt through her journey. Before I hand over to Jamila, I'll just run through a few logistical points. Jamila will share her story for the next 30 to 40 minutes or so, and then we'll have some time for questions. Please type your questions in the chat space at any time, and we'll aim to get to them all in turn. At the end of the session, we'll have a short evaluation survey, which we'd really appreciate if you could complete. Please do switch on your video if you feel comfortable, and display your name so we know who you all are. It's always great to see names and faces. Finally, as I mentioned, Stories is all about sharing personal experience, and we want to have a safe space for everyone to be able to share their views. So please be respectful when you make your comments and questions when you type them up. So with that, I'd like to invite Jamila to begin. Thank you, Jamila, and over to you.
Thank you so much to the AKYSB team for inviting me to be part of Stories on the Rooftop. It's a real privilege to be virtually with you all this evening. And a big hello to everyone that's joined. Thank you for joining in. I'm excited to share with you my experience of a challenge that I've journeyed with for over 18 years. That is having a speech difficulty in the form of a stutter or a stammer. So in this session, I'd really like to take you all on a journey with me as I share a bit about what stammering is and the myths associated with it. Also, my personal story of how my stammer developed and how it held me back for almost all areas of my life, from not being able to communicate with my family and friends, but also in how it really dictated in how I viewed myself. I'll then share a miracle experience with you all of how hope was restored when I felt that there was no way out, and a program that converted my fears into courage. Finally, I'll share some life lessons with you that I've learned along my journey that's helped not only my speech, but also in dealing with everyday challenges. So, what is stammering? Well, it's a very complex and misunderstood speech difficulty. There's an assumption that it's simply psychological, that it's rooted in the mind. That actually, it's a difficulty in the delivery of speech, a neurological condition that makes it physically hard to get the words out. And it can look like repetition, prolongation, and blocks on certain sounds. You can visibly see the tension on a person that has a stammer, and that's a very overt stammer. But you can also see that they struggle beneath that. There are avoidance techniques and use of filler words, for example, where their stammer may not be as obvious. So the British Stammering Association have done research and say that 1 in 100 people in the UK have a stammer. And about 8 children will stammer at some point in their life, but most will go on to be fluent. And 3% of adults will have it as a lifelong condition. Stammering affects more men than women generally, but it doesn't discriminate between ethnicity or background. And the causes are varied. So it can be from developmental stammering, from when you are a child and developing your speech and language skills, but it can also be acquired later in life. And it happens for a whole set of reasons. There's no specific one, but they can include a stroke or certain medications or even other psychological or emotional trauma. But 60% is actually hereditary. There's also a myth that stammering is linked to intellectual capacity. And also it occurs because you're nervous or not very confident. And that can come across in that way because when fluent speakers talk, they tend to speed up their speech and maybe even use filler words. And feeling nervous or shy or not very confident can actually occur as a result of the stammer, but it's not the stammer itself. It's not the cause. And everyone stammers differently. So the way that I stammer would be very different to someone else. And there are different degrees. So from one moment, you can be able to really express yourself with a friend. You don't have too much of a struggle. But then maybe in the next hour or the next day, you go into a coffee shop and ask for a hot chocolate, and you're not able to get the chest sound for chocolate. And it can really be debilitating and challenging because there's just a lot of confusion. And if you're tired or stressed, then that can also impact it as well. So what actually sustains the stammer that I've learned over the years is the fear of stammering itself, and also the stigma attached to it. And although it's a physical response, it's what's beneath the surface. And the way I like to best describe it is through the analogy of an iceberg. There's that tip of the iceberg, and that's the physical side. The blocks, the repetition, the tension and distortion that you can see on a person who stammers. But it's the 90% of the stammer that you don't see. That is the fear of rejection, the fear of not knowing whether you're going to be able to say that particular word or sound. It's utter confusion as to why one moment I'm able to say my name to this person, able to have a conversation, and then the next moment it's really challenging. It's the feeling of isolation, feeling like you're all alone, that no one can understand. The shame, because the world is so dominant by the spoken word. It's the shame of not being able to say even your own name, or something so simple like, can I have a hot chocolate? And I love hot chocolate. The anxiety of being in a social situation and thinking, will I be able to say what I want to say? Will they ask me to speak? The guilt and the hopelessness. Will this end? So, a little guessing game. As you can see, there are some lovely faces on this screen who you might actually recognise. And I'd be interested to know whether you do recognise any, and if any of them surprise you. If you could put it into the chat, I'd be really interested to see. So, Aliza, do we have any responses?
Yeah, someone says Hrithik Roshan.
Hrithik Roshan, yeah. So he developed his stammer at a young age and used to practice on sounds and words just to help him. And now he's a very successful actor with many films under his belt.
Yeah, and we've got Bruce Willis and Ed Sheeran.
Yes, so Ed Ed Sheeran is a really interesting one because I was surprised when I recently learned that he has a stammer too and developed his as a child. And you think someone so successful and being able to sing, how is it possible that he has a stammer? So a really fun fact for you all is that people who stammer don't actually stammer when they sing. And there are a few reasons for that. One of them is that when you're singing, you're actually using a different part of your brain to the brain that functions with speech and language. Also, you have an identity as a singer. So I love singing too. And when I sing, I see myself as a singer in that moment. And another point is that there's intonation and musicality and a different pace, which you don't normally get when you're speaking. Any others?
Yeah, Rowan Atkinson, Marilyn Monroe.
Yes, all very surprising. I know that Rowan Atkinson, he's definitely one of my favorite comedians, and to see him able to take up space and just be so hilarious is, I think, was definitely an inspiration to me growing up. Thanks, Elisa, and everyone that put all the names in the chat. Seems like everyone has a good sense of general knowledge. So a bit about my story and how I developed my stammer and how it affected me. So as a child, I was very talkative and actually very mischievous. I'd go up to strangers in the street and make the most random conversations with them. So much so that when I actually saw someone smoking, I wouldn't hesitate to go up to them and say, "This is not a very healthy habit for you." And my uncle actually used to say to my mum, "You better be careful with Jamila because someone might not respond as sweetly as they do." But as I grew up, I was faced with some experiences that were not under my control. And my speech began to mirror my thoughts and my feelings. Stammering is also hereditary in my family too. And it was between the age of around 12 and 14 in year 8 that I noticed my stammer really manifesting in a covert way, where family and friends wouldn't be able to tell that I have a stammer. And I used clever little tactics to conceal the fact that I was struggling with my speech, such as substituting words. So I'm from Reading, proud to be a Reading girl, but couldn't say the R, so I just say I'm from Berkshire. I use a lot of filler words such as like and ums in almost every sentence because I didn't want to be recognized as someone that has a stammer. I felt really embarrassed and I didn't want to have that rejection or people perceiving me to be not very confident. And this occurred in all sorts of situations. So at school, for example, when I was in my French class, I remember that circle of death almost when we were asked to introduce ourselves in French. And it came to my turn. And I tried so hard to get the for oui, monsieur, but it just didn't come out. And I remember my French teacher looking at me really sternly. "It's oui, monsieur," as if I didn't know that the 10 other students before me had just said oui, monsieur. That then translated into me avoiding saying my own name altogether. So I'd ask friends to introduce me. And I often got, "Have you forgotten your own name?" I'd avoid the phone. So I'd run away when the phone rang and my lovely mum would pick up for me. I also asked her to write notes to teachers to say, "Jamila can't speak today." And although people did try to help me, my friends and family, they would do so by guessing my words, which they were sometimes mostly wrong. Someone even made noises every time I'd use a filler word because they thought it was a habit, not because it was difficult for me to get the word out. And I also avoided eye contact, and even others avoided eye contact with me. And even I didn't know how I could help myself at that time. This made me feel very antisocial and shy and underconfident. But as I said, when I was a child, that's not my innate personality. But I had to portray myself as someone mute because I didn't want anyone finding out. And an experience of this actually was when I was in a car with my cousin driving. So she was driving me to a shopping centre in London. And I literally said nothing to her at that time. And I desperately wanted to connect. She's a really cool cousin and we had a lot in common, such as our love for Bollywood. And in that car, she was really patient with me. She didn't push me or make me feel bad. She didn't see my stammer. She saw me for the person that I am. But I felt frustrated and just confused as to why I couldn't communicate. So in my later years, in my teenage years, I started to use, well, I wasn't able to use any techniques because my speech became so overt that at worst I'd close my eyes. I'd use dramatic gestures to try and get the words out. And I'd even bite my own tongue just to be able to say something so simple as my name. So of course, I didn't have much of a social life. I think I went to maybe one club when I was 18 with a few friends. So I pretty much stayed at home and watched my favorite series, the Gilmore Girls, and vicariously lived through it because it was a very witty show. And I was just frustrated I couldn't be my authentic self. And I just thought to myself, how am I going to go to university? I mean, I'll have to give presentations, I'll have to say my name. How will I get a job? I'll just have to sit at a desk all day, which is not a bad thing. But as a people's person, I just knew it was holding me back. And I prayed for a miracle just before university. And that miracle came at the perfect time. So I love to share the story of how this happened. In March 2011, I was having a normal day at college, doing my A-levels, and I remember feeling really stressed that day. Just probably a difficulty with communicating to my friend or also with exams approaching. And I thought, okay, I need to do something. I can't feel miserable all the time. So I went on my emails, listened to some music, and I noticed a flyer. And it was a flyer to celebrate International Women's Day at the Ismaili Centre. And as someone that's an advocate of gender rights and human rights, I thought, wow, this looks really good. And actually one of my current friends now, Rahila Mohibi, she was giving a talk about Afghanistan, and I was writing an essay about it, and I really wanted to find out more. So I thought, okay, this will be great to go to. So I get home, really excited, and I say, Mum, look at this event, can we go? And she said, Jamila, that's great, but I've just come home from work, it's a Friday. I can't take you, I'm tired. But I can take you to the station and drop you back. Now, as someone that avoided all situations, I thought, okay, this is just a trap. How can I travel on the train and be in the social situation alone when I relied so heavily on people introducing me? But there was something inside of me that day. There was a voice in me that said, just take the plunge. So I decided to listen to that voice for once. And I took the very anxious journey to the Ismaili Centre. And I remember seeing the whole just crowd of people. It was a very popular event. And I felt really nervous. So rather than go and getting some chai like everybody else, which is kind of what I wanted to do, I just sat down in the chair waiting patiently, keeping invisible and waiting for this talk. So Rahila began to speak. And I was like, okay, that was definitely worth it. And then I thought, okay, rather than just leaving, because that would be rude, I'll wait for 5 more minutes. And that's when I saw the panelists. And one of the panelists, Dr. Zara Jesser, came out, and she just caught my eye because she was so happy and smiley and confident. And I just thought, wow, what's her story? And I was a little bit cynical as well, just thinking, what are they going to talk about? So then Dr. Zara Jesser begins to speak. And she starts to tell her journey about how she developed her stammer at the same age as I did. And at that moment, I just couldn't believe it. I had goosebumps all over me. How can someone so beautiful and confident have a stammer, let alone sitting on a stage and sharing to the whole world that she has a stammer, which is what I wanted to keep away from everyone. And of course, that shifted my entire inner narrative. And I went up to her and I just couldn't get a word out, but she knew. She said to me, there is a way out. And that secret was revealed to everyone. And I thought it was such a strength. Now, if I had not taken that brave step of going to the Smiley Centre, I would not have known what was to come next, just before I started university. And that's when Zara introduced me to the McGuire Programme. And the McGuire Programme is a speech and language programme that was founded by a fellow stammerer himself, Dave McGuire, in 1994, at the age of 45, using a variety of methods. It's a 4-day intensive course that teaches a whole new way of speaking and thinking. It's not a cure, but it's a technique that aims to control speech, not to be fluent, but to be eloquent. And there are thousands of people that have joined this program across the world with a variety of different experiences, from being a new student, having just joined, to having gone to a couple of courses, and others who've actually qualified to become coaches and instructors. And it's a lifelong membership that provides support via courses, over the phone, and also support groups. I knew about this before I joined, but of course I was skeptical because I did have speech therapy growing up and also did cognitive behavioural therapy, which helped a little bit, but it was only for 1 day a week and I wasn't able to call my speech therapist whenever I had a challenge. And especially as this program doesn't claim to cure you, I thought, is this really going to work for me? That's when I went on my first course. And that was in Ealing in 2011 in a hotel. And when I got there, the anxiety was sky high. There was just people everywhere. But I figured as this program is run completely and entirely by people who stammer, there has to be at least one person in this room that feels the same as me. And I was right, because there were 18 of us joining for the first time. And I was interviewed on camera because we were told to speak in front of the whole entire room. And what I'm about to share with you is a very vulnerable video, but it's an important one, and I've learned to embrace it in my journey.
How old are you?
I'm 19.
What do you do?
I'm a student. Just about to reach university in like October. Hopefully, we get my results next week, which is very scary.
What subject will you be studying?
I'll be studying anthropology, like an international development.
And your full name again?
It's Jamila Damani.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, as you can see from that video, I closed my eyes. I kept within my space. I didn't want to be visibly seen. And I used a lot of filler words to try and get my words out. So, it's all about now learning a new way of breathing and speaking on the course. On the Thursday, we were told to really isolate ourselves from everyone else. No phones, no TV. It was going to be long days and hard work. Just focusing on our speech and addressing the physical and psychological parts of stammering, as I showed you in the iceberg. On the Thursday of the course, I was introduced to a costal breathing technique for a better intake of airflow, and it's also powerful. So I actually would like all of you to just give a big sigh or a yawn. That's your costal breath. And we were told to speak with only 3 words per breath. And we were provided techniques and tools to help us control the physical side, such as a deep tone where you're taking all the tension away from your vocal cords and articulators and bringing it down into the chest. I really love that one, it scares everyone. And then there's also phonetics, really practicing the words and sounds. We did this the entire day from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Then on the Friday, that addresses the 90% of the stammer. That's the psychological tools that we learn of how to accept who we are and also do what we fear the most. One quote that I heard repeatedly was, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. So just like if you're scared of heights or spiders, the experts say that we have to face that fear. We have to embrace that actively. Show others that we're working on our speech, that we're not fluent, but we have control. We also did a really fun workshop called the Harrison Workshop, where we got to really play around with the techniques and use other non-verbal communication tools like eye contact and effective pausing and musicality in your voice. On the Saturday, that's when the fun really begins. This is where we were told to put everything we've learned to the test. The power of repetition, of practice, of giving evidence to ourselves that we can do it. So we were challenged to speak to 100 strangers in 2 or 3 hours, and never thought I would ever be able to do it. So I had my coach, because everyone's given a coach to support you. And I had to speak to the first person, and I was just really, really unsure if I could do it. What would their reaction be? Would they laugh? Would they walk away? And I did it, and I felt, okay, that wasn't too bad. Then it got to 20 people I spoke to, and I thought, it's gone from barely manageable fear to manageable fear. Then it got to 50, 60. Okay, this is actually kind of fun. I'm actually really enjoying speaking to people, asking for directions, challenging those words and sounds. Then it got to around 90. And it felt kind of boring. I've already said my name like for the 90th time and also asked for a hot chocolate. Then it got to 106 and it was just boring. I wanted to do something else that was going to challenge me. And we were then asked to give a public speech just on the third day of the course. So I'd really like to share this moment with you all.
Jamila Damani. 3 days ago, I found it incredibly difficult to introduce myself. Speaking to a large audience, even to my friends, seemed impossible without stammering uncontrollably. But today, thanks to the support of Gemma, my coach, I was able to introduce myself to a whole carriage of people in the train getting here. I have never felt so exhilarated and confident in my whole entire life.
So I hope you can hear that. So as you could see from that video, I had my eye contact there. I was taking up space. I was voice projecting. And I just felt an utter transformation in how I felt about myself. And I was also very proud of the other students as well in how they gave their speeches and overcame their fears. So I'll share with you one more slide here. And that's the stuttering iceberg that you saw. So as you can see, for me on that day, my iceberg changed from having a fear, anxiety, isolation, guilt, denial, to acceptance, to a sense of pride in celebrating my small wins. I got to 100 contacts, spoke to 100 people. I had courage that I actually got up on that soapbox. I had more kindness for myself. I had a community that was there rooting for me. And I had hope. So after my first course on the Sunday, that's when we were told to go home and begin the journey, because it was a beginning. Now, even after 9 years of being on the programme and attending courses, it's still something that we have to work on. But I knew at that moment I wasn't alone anymore. I had a whole support network of 150 coaches that I can call from all over the world at any time. And after that course, I called my family and friends. I spoke to my cousin, the one that took me to the shopping centre, and I had a really lovely conversation with her. I went to university to study anthropology and international development at the University of Sussex. I became a student representative for anthropology. And most importantly, I could say my name. And like any journey though, there's always a few steps forwards and a few steps backwards. So this is not a cure. And I know that many people afterwards said, probably just as a way of support, that, oh, okay, so that's it now. You're cured. Everything must be fine. But like any challenge, it's not linear. And there are several things that I have to do to try and keep it up. And tiredness, for example, and stress can also impact it. But a few really proud achievements is speaking on BBC Radio Berkshire with Andrew Peach, organising a McGuire course in London, where I got to support the new students there and be there for them in their journey. And also I'm qualified as a coach now, and I support 11 students on a lifelong basis. Another thing I'm really proud of is being part of an ITV documentary called School for Stammerers that came out in 2018 and saw the journey of 6 students conquering their fears. And I'd like to just share that video with you. I've got a short clip to give you a flavour of what the programme's like and how it was also like for me on my first course.
Stammering, or stuttering, affects over 500,000 people in the UK. And 6 stammerers have arrived from all over the country to undertake an intensive speech therapy course called the McGuire Programme.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Yeah, very well. How are you?
It's run by a team of coaches who are all stammerers themselves.
Okay, welcome everyone.
The course starts tomorrow, but tonight, the new students are being prepared for the massive challenge ahead.
This is a tough thing to do. We've been there. Everyone in this room behind you all has a stammer.
For the coaches to see what their speech is like, the students have to record a first day video.
If you can one by one, please come forward and sit in the seat.
Just the thought of speaking in public is terrifying for most stammerers.
They tell you about the first day video and you're like, can I really do this?
Can you start with your name, please?
Tony Robinson.
It's Jessica. It's Jessica. It's Jessica Robin Davis. James Critchlow.
Emily Booth.
My name is Riley John William Riley John William Partridge.
And how old are you?
I am 13. 13.
Kills you. Every single time he stammers. I'd do anything to take it away from him. Absolutely anything.
So that was a very emotional course, being one of the coaches on that course. It was amazing to see their journey and how much they progress and how much courage they have to overcome some of their fears. And it was interesting also being on the other side, being the interviewer, just like I was interviewed. I could really feel their fear and also them not knowing what to expect. So I've got a picture here of all these amazing people, coaches, that accompanied the new students on their first course from the documentary. And as you can see, all different ages, ethnicities and backgrounds, but we're all united because we have this common struggle and we're all there to help each other and support one another. And I think it's this supportive community that's got me to where I am today. And I wanted to share with you all a couple of pictures, but first of all, I'd like to ask everyone again, does anyone within the audience have a fear of public speaking or giving presentations? Elisa, do we have any things in the chat?
We've got a raised hand.
Amazing, so it seems like everyone else doesn't fear public speaking. Or actually, public speaking, okay, I've got another one. Public speaking is actually one of the most feared aspects of life. There's been quite a few research studies that shows that public speaking is the #1 fear and death is a close second. That really surprised me. And I think it just goes to show how much we all fear of what other people think maybe, or how we come across. And being part of a public speakers club called Toastmasters, which is an international organization that helps just even fluent speakers, anyone that wants to overcome their fear of public speaking or practice presentations, they can join. So as you can see here in the top left-hand corner, I joined my local Toastmasters, and it was interesting seeing so many really nervous to go up, just like me, with sweaty hands and just wondering how it's going to go. And a lot of filler words were used by even fluent speakers. I think in one club, in one meeting, there was 160 filler words used. And Toastmasters has really given me that community as well to practice outside of my comfort zone of McGuire, where I'm now competing with fluent speakers. And I've actually won a couple of my speeches competing with fluent speakers. I never would have thought that before the age of 19, I'd ever be able to accomplish that. You can also see in the right-hand corner, the top corner, that I'm teaching. And I was in Mumbai in 2013 on an internship to research on education and gender within a NGO that supports adolescent girls. And I think having a stammer and also not being that great in my Hindi really gave the students here a bit of a boost. They didn't feel as terrified to practice their English because they knew that I'm human just like them, and I also have my struggles. On the bottom left-hand corner, so bottom right-hand corner, you can see that I'm on a truck and I'm speaking in a microphone. And that was when I was volunteering in Bangladesh with voluntary service overseas, advertising for an event that we organised for village farmers on solutions for agricultural challenges. And I advertised it in Bangla in the village in Bangladesh. And that was a really fun experience. And it was really nice to not have to think about my speech as much. I could really focus on making sure that people understood my Bangla, where actually some of the national volunteers had to translate for us because not everybody could understand. So a few lessons that I've learned from my journey. Number one, I've learned to be and feel comfortable with being uncomfortable. The power of owning our challenges and being our own cheerleaders can really help us push ourselves out of our comfort zones and grow as a person. I've changed my narrative of what failure and success look like. And I know that there's no magic pill. So me even saying, can I have a hot chocolate? Or being able to just even show up is success to me. Not stammering is not a success or a failure. Which leads me on to my next point. Seeing a challenge as a sport. I've learned to see speaking as a sport, where just like an athlete needs to exercise and do their stretches, I also need to practice in the morning with my breathing and make calls and attend support groups. And stammering has really impacted me in that I've developed empathy and resilience, and I've cultivated a supportive community. I know who has my back. And I've appreciated the art of speaking and listening. So it's transformed me. It's given me a voice, not just physically, but in being able to express myself and my opinions. So lastly, before I finish, if anyone knows anyone that has a stammer, a friend, a colleague, or a family member, I like to just quote what Bruce Willis says. It's easy to get frustrated with a person that stammers, but believe me, the one who stutters is much more frustrated. Be patient, always listen, offer encouragement, and give positive reinforcement. I like to add to give people time to speak. Don't finish off their sentence. Don't look away. Maintain eye contact with them. Be patient. Don't say spit it out or hurry up. And no, we haven't forgotten our names. So thank you all so much for listening. And if anybody wants to speak more about stammering or wants to find out more, please do let AKYSB know or put it in the survey. And I'm open for any questions that anybody has. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamila, for sharing your story and being so open and honest about your experiences. A few people have written in the chat that you are inspiration, and I think that definitely is true. I think how far you've come and the confidence has really shown. So a lot of people are saying wonderful story, really inspiring. So lots of encouraging messages there. So thank you again for taking the time to share with us. I will open it up. We've got a bit of time for questions. So if anyone has anything they'd like to ask Jamila, please pop it in the chat, and hopefully she'll be able to answer your questions. I can start with one, maybe, if I may. Do you think that there's enough support, in schools? I think especially it must be quite hard for children who are at school who struggle with a stammer. Do you think there's enough support within schools? Do teachers know how to handle it, and is there enough support, do you think, provided in schools for stammerers?
Thanks, Elisa. That's a really good question. So I think when I was at school, which was a long time ago, I think because stammering is so complex in that, yes, for some people, it's very overt that you can see it. But for others like myself, it was very covert. So as I said, I use a lot of tricks and not many people would know. So I think that most of my teachers had been supportive, but I remember my French teacher, and I think because stammering is so misunderstood, I think teachers could definitely do with understanding a bit more about stammering. And I think just generally, just the public can definitely do with understanding more about the complexities. But I know when my mum used to write notes for me, thanks mum, who's also in the audience, that my teachers did understand and they did empathise. And I know when I had to give my A-level English speech, because we had to do that for our GCSEs and for my A-levels too, they were very understanding and sort of gave me time to practice. So I think teachers, are in general quite supportive, but I think there could definitely be some more awareness there. Thank you.
Thanks. So we've got a few questions coming through on the chat. So one here is, how often do you need to attend a refresher course before withdrawal kicks in?
Good question. So I attended my refresher course a few months after, and because this is not a cure, this is a technique that allows you to control your speech. So when you're in your comfort zones, like being in a room full of people that stammer, I don't really have any struggles. But when I'm out of my comfort zones, such as at work, like now, for example, at work, in a new job, or just when I'm with friends, because speech happens sort of differently for people that are fluent, they tend to speed up a bit more, and it's very easy to get out of the habit and out of the focus. So attending courses is really important. I think I've been on at least 20 courses over the 9 years, and I know it helps me every single time. It reminds me, because you see the new students and see their progress, and you see how important it is to really practice. But like anything, like any journey or any challenge, we're still human, so I still struggle. There are many moments where I struggle, but the difference now is that I have a technique, and I know I can get on a course or attend a support group. And there's other things that I have to do as well, like I mentioned. So just doing my breathing in the morning, we have a Keep It Costal app, and picking up the phone, just doing things that I used to fear. So doing what I fear the most helps.
Thanks. Question here is, what advice would you give to yourself if the you of today could talk to the you age 16?
Wow, I didn't know that this miracle could come, for example. I think have faith and know that my stammer doesn't have to define me, that there's many parts of me. I really enjoy dancing and singing, for example, and playing my instrument, my harmonium. And there's other parts of my personality. Stammering is just one part of it. So I would probably say, take a breather, but obviously I couldn't do that then. But just have faith. And I would also say it's what my opinion matters more than anybody else's.
Great advice. Another question about, I guess, similar to what we discussed earlier, but just about how we can get, for example, health professionals maybe to understand and sort of respect maybe speech and language issues a bit more. How do we get it recognized, I guess, is the thrust of that question, and get appropriate, advice and support.
So the British Stammering Association is a really, really good website to go to. There's a lot of facts and dispelling of myths around stammering. And I think connecting with organisations like that, the McGuire Programme has been a huge influence in my life and in terms of raising awareness too. So learning as well about the different causes of stammering, knowing that there's not just one. And just speaking to people that stammer. Ask them what they find challenging. Ask them, how can I support you? I know some people did growing up, and that was just so nice to feel like that they recognised that I had this challenge, particularly when I was more overt. So I'd just say, yeah, connecting with people that do, and organisations as well.
Another question here is, do you think it's worth enrolling into courses at a young age, or do you think you get more out of it maybe when you're older?
So I attended speech and language therapy when I was around 15, 16. And I think it helped then because I was more mature in that respect, or I was able to really see how my stammer affected me and sort of wanted to do something about it. I think it's great when you can get support when you're young. So with the McGuire Programme, they take in new students that are around 10 or 11. And I think that's a really good age because you've had some experience of how stammering has affected you. And you're able to then do some of the challenges as well that the programme gives, like speaking to 100 strangers or giving a public speech. But I think it can really help when you are introduced to a programme when you're younger, because it means that you're given the tools and techniques sooner, so it doesn't take over your life. I know I wouldn't have done half the things, if not all of them, if I hadn't joined the McGuire Programme. And I did it just before university, so I don't even know whether I would have gone to university. It was that bad, and it really held me back. So as soon as possible is definitely what I'd say, but there's people that have joined the programme, for example, when they're in their 60s. So there's no time limit.
Fantastic. So I hope you're seeing all the messages on the chat, Jamila, because there's lots of warmth and people saying, thank you for your positivity, and you are an inspiration, and keep shining. So it's nice to see all those messages. So thank you so much once again, Jamila, for taking the time to be with us tonight. I'll give you a chance actually to say a few closing words if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, everyone, for your kind comments and for joining. It is really great to see so many lovely faces. I'd like to actually finish with a poem that I think encapsulates stammering really, really beautifully. And it was written by a boy called Sam. He's 10 years old. And it was posted last week on the British Stammering Association's website. It's called I Have a Stammer, and I'd love to share that with you before we close. I have a stammer. It's part of me. My words can get stuck and they don't flow free. It doesn't mean I'm shy. I'm not weak or scared. Sometimes my words are just hard to be heard. The words are right there on the tip of my tongue. They often get stuck and my pauses are long. Sometimes I repeat a sound or a word. This makes it hard for my voice to be heard. I ask you to wait, be patient and smile. My words will come out, but it may take a while. Don't finish my sentence. Don't laugh and don't stare. Just give me some more time and show me that you care. The more I relax, I want you to know I feel more confident and the easier they flow. I am important to you. My opinions still matter. I just struggle to keep up with the flow of the chatter. So be happy being you, and that is the key. I have a stammer. It's what makes me me.
What a lovely way to end. So there's a few people clapping. So again, thank you so much, Jamila, for being so open and honest and sharing your story with us today.